Hello, welcome. In this video I'm going to talk about how to plan a video game project. I'm assuming that I'm talking to a producer rather than a programmer or designer, and so producers like a project manager. And I'm assuming that you're at the beginning of a game project before there's even a plan for the game. So let's get into it. Oops, there we go. All right, so first thing you've got to do is define what are you making. So find out the initial parameters. What kind of game are we making? Are there any special features or requirements? So it could be we're building a 2D platformer similar to Mario Brothers. And the requirements are that there's 12 levels and you can have 2 players on screen at once, split screen. So these might be the initial rules that you've been given. Oh, maybe the main character has to be, an octopus, or maybe a character from a cartoon on TV or something like that. So there'll be some initial parameters. What's the budget? How many man months do we have? You need to know either how much money is available, so that you can work out how many man months you have. Also, are there any dates that need to be hit? Does this need to come out on a certain point, or do people want it to come out at a certain point? Maybe it needs to come out in time with a new season of the cartoon that's going to be on TV, or a new movie that's coming out, or perhaps they just want to ship it before the sort of holiday sales period, near the end of the year, so that people will buy it as Christmas presents. So you need to know these things. What are we making? What are the kind of like high level requirements? What's the budget? What kind of team size can we have? For how long? And are there any dates that need to be hit? And then after that, you need to design the game. So this is where the game designer, steps forward and does a lot of work. So they write a GDD, a game design document, and this describes the gameplay in detail, as well as non-gamey stuff like achievements, voice chat, cheat codes, leaderboards, etc. Basically, everything that they can define about the game and how it works. On the gameplay side, it might be how many levels there are, what the player moves are, what the enemy characters are, what weapons you've got, and how all of that stuff behaves. Similarly, it could have like if there's points or currency, maybe there's in-game items that you're selling, how all that stuff works. So all this stuff's in the game design document. As the GDD is getting written, the leads should discuss the scope and budget as they go. So the designer doesn't design something that will take too long to build. If you've got a 3-person team that's going to make a game, then you don't want to make, World of Warcraft or Fortnite or something like that. You need to be making something smaller. So, as much as possible, the GDD should try and land in the right ballpark for the team and the budget, and the timeline. Once the GDD exists, the programming department can write the TDD, the technical design document. This means thinking through everything that needs programming and making some decisions about how things will get done. So are we going to use Unreal or Unity, or make our own engine? And how are we going to do leaderboards? How are we going to do voice chat? How are we going to do all of these things? So that there's a technical plan. Okay, so far we've got the initial parameters, game design, and a technical design. Next, I like to create a block schedule. For this, you work with the leads and stakeholders. By stakeholders, I mean higher ups, the people that are paying for the thing, or maybe the studio manager or something like that, or the clients that are asking you to build the game. And you define how many people are we going to have on this? How many milestones are we going to have? I like to think in milestones that are 4 weeks long, but this can vary a bit. Monthly or 4 weeks is kind of pretty common. What will the primary responsibilities be for each team member? So if you've got 3 programmers, what are they each going to be doing? Maybe someone's on gameplay, someone's on user interface, etc. What are the dates for entering pre-production, production, alpha, beta, submission, and shipping? So work out those things. And what will each person be working on each month? Pardon me. So you're thinking through what's going to happen throughout development, at least at a high level. And then you put all this stuff into a spreadsheet with columns for months or milestones and rows for team members. The intersection cells will give a high-level description of what the team member will be working on. Here's an example block schedule. So, excellent. So here I'm saying this is a PC 2D puzzle platformer. What would that be? Something like Mario Brothers, but a bit more puzzly, let's say. And here's my block schedule. So I've got a start date on March 1st, 2023. And then, so that cell's got that date in it. The next cell just says D4, which is the start date, plus 28 days. And so it automatically works out the date. And then I just copy pasted that cell over the rest here, and each one of them adds 28 to the previous one. So if I want to change the start date, it'll automatically update all of the dates. And then we've got milestone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 10. Okay. Let's have a look at this row. So we're starting on this date, and oops, I made a mistake already. It's a little bit funny with, this is just a rough example, so I'm just going to do this. So I'm going to shrink this column down. There we go. So milestone 1 is the end of the first 4 weeks of work. And you can see that the lead programmer has been working on the TDD, the designer has been working on the GDD, and so on. Other people have been doing stuff as well. So milestone is due on this date. It started on that date. And then milestone 2 is here. So end of milestone 2, we're 8 weeks in. That is the end of pre-production, which means that the following milestones are production, and production ends when you hit alpha. So you hit alpha on milestone 7 on 9/13. So alpha meaning it's feature complete. Everything that functionally needs to be in the game is in the game. All the levels, all the widgets, all the player moves, all the user interface, etc. It's all there. It may just need a bit more polishing. So that's the state that you need to hit by 9/13 in this case. And then one milestone later, 4 weeks later, we hit beta. And that means pencils down on polishing. No more polishing after you hit that date. So, alpha to beta was about bug fixing and polishing. After beta, it's just bug fixing and also just the important bugs, really. You're really trying to sort of stop poking the jello, let it kind of stabilize so you can ship the thing. So you're not adding new bugs by fixing other bugs. You hit the beta state by 10/11. Got another. So after you hit that date, you are now in beta. So during milestone 9, you are in beta, meaning you're just fixing bugs. And at the end of it, on 11/8, you submit. So you submit to the first party, or Steam, Sony, Microsoft. You submit, and then 1 month later, it's gone through submission. They gave it a big thumbs up. Everything went fine first time, and it hits the street. Now, yeah, the timeline for these is different per game. It depends on what platform you're shipping on and how big and complicated the game is. I've just gone with a simple 1 month for each of these steps. Okay, so I've got a bunch of milestones. Down the side over here, I've got different departments. I've got programmers, I've got designers, artists, and a producer. I've got the name of the team member: Alice, Bob, Carla, Dave, Elise, etc. And the role. So Alice is the lead programmer and will be doing gameplay programming. Bob's going to do UI and sound, and Carla's going to do builds, certification requirements, and miscellaneous other stuff, jazz hands. On the design side, we've got Dave as the lead designer and will be doing gameplay. Elise is going to handle UI, sound, and levels, creating gameplay levels. And on the art side, we've got Frank as the lead artist, and he's going to focus on the gameplay assets. And Grace is going to handle UI and miscellaneous stuff. And we've got a producer, and they're going to be doing project management and also some QA on the side, because it's a small team and we can't afford a QA person. Okay, and then in the cells, we've got a high-level plan of like, what are people going to be doing month on month? So, at the start, we're working on the TDD. Let's just go, I'll not go through every cell, but I'll go across one line, or a few lines. So the lead programmer is going to work on the TDD at first. I'll take the programming department. Meanwhile, Bob's going to create a project. It's not going to be the full game. It's just going to be like, hey, you can sync this thing and you can press run and you can see it. You can see something on screen. It might just be the words "Hello World" with no player and no nothing. And Carla's going to set up Jenkins. Jenkins is an automated build machine that is going to spit out new builds of the game so that anybody, but mainly Horace, the producer, can play the game anytime they want, and they're always playing the latest version. That's what Jenkins is for. Okay, what about the next month? So Alice is going to work on the player, the world, like the 2D world, and the camera, so the camera that's tracking the player. Bob and Carla are both going to work on widgets. That's just my name for interactive stuff that's in the world. So it could be buttons, pushable boxes, smashable boxes, exploding things, maybe an enemy or something like that. So gameplay widgets. Oh, sorry, I skipped a month. Some basic UI here. As we go further along, Alice keeps on working on player, world, and camera, and then general polish. See, it's not very well defined what they're going to be doing. Bob's going to work on sound and music in this month, and then HUD. That's the UI at the top of the gameplay screen. Pause menu, main menu. And Carla's going to work on gameplay widgets for a while and then work on some other stuff, leaderboards, achievements, and other Steam features. This is a Steam game. And then after alpha, once we're at feature complete, so again, everything's in the game that needs to be in the game. After that, we're just going to say polish and bugs. What polish? Don't know. It's too far out. We don't know what needs polishing. What bugs? Don't know. We've not made those bugs yet. After we hit the beta date and we're going towards submission, just bugs, no polish, just let's ship this thing. After you've submitted, you might, well, really, you're kind of, if you submit on this date, what are you doing between it submitting and it hitting the street? Well, maybe you're kind of playing the game some more, looking out for any more bugs. Just in case it fails at submission, then when you resubmit, it could have some extra fixes that you didn't have time for earlier. So going to keep on working on bugs. And I'll not go through all the cells, but similarly, the design team's going to work on building levels and adding sound and music, and the art team's going to make all the artwork for the game. You can see Grace here does some UI stuff, then logos, marketing assets, UI polish. Yeah, so that's what I call a block schedule. It gives you a nice high-level view of these are all the milestones, these are the key dates that we're going to hit. And here's what's, who's going to be doing what, when. You definitely want to think about what your key risks are. One risk with a game is it fun? Are people going to want to play this? And so early on, you want to focus on the gameplay, like making it a fun game to play. And then later on, you can do things like leaderboards, achievements, marketing assets, which are necessary but not risky. So looking at this, at a block schedule, it's a good way of sort of like saying when are we going to do different things. All right, I'll go back to the slide deck. So that's a block schedule, and then we also want to make a detailed schedule. So work with the leads. Now that you've got your GDD and your TDD, you've got a good idea of what it is you're trying to make. Now you really want, and you've got a block schedule that gives you a rough idea of like the timeline and everything. Now you want to get, as best you can, a detailed list of like everything that needs to be done with estimates. So yeah, work with leads to create, pardon me, to create a detailed task list for the whole project and add estimates for each task. Add some buffer for unforeseen and underestimated tasks. Calculate total estimates for each department, and here's an example which I'll show you in a second. I just want to go over unforeseen and underestimated tasks. Unforeseen tasks, things you just forgot about. Let's say the game's meant to have achievements and you just totally forgot about it. The designer didn't put it in the design GDD, the programmer didn't catch that, and it's not mentioned in the TDD, it's not in the schedule, but halfway through development you're like, oh wait, we need achievements, So that's an unforeseen task. And that's kind of a big one, but you can also get small ones as well. Underestimated tasks, people tend to think optimistically when they're estimating how long things will take. How long will it take you to go and fill up the car with gas? Well, 5 minutes to drive there, 5 minutes to fill it up, 5 minutes to drive back, 15 minutes, 20 tops. Well, what about if there's a line at the gas station, or there's a traffic jam, or you get a puncture, in your tire? Things happen. And typically they happen in a bad way, as in like there's no way that my 15-minute trip is suddenly going to become 5 minutes. However, could it become an hour because I got a puncture? Yes, it could. So often estimates tend to be kind of optimistic, thinking that the best is going to happen, and when they're off, when reality sort of strikes, you tend to be longer than you are shorter. That's just kind of how things tend to go. So we have a buffer to account for these things that we forgot and things that we underestimated. Let's have a look at a detailed schedule. Pardon me. So I've got tabs here for different departments, and the programming department one is the most developed. Here I'm saying we're making a 2D Mario Brothers style game, and I'll read through some of this just to give a feel for breaking down a big project. So I've got a section, I've got the first column here says vertical slice, and lower down it says production. So vertical slice, you could also think of it as pre-production. By the way, there's no sort of fixed format for a schedule like this. You can make it whatever format you like. The main thing you're trying to get is a number of days of how long is this going to take. So you can format it however you like. This is just one way that I like to do it. So what have we got? I've got some setup. P4 is short for Perforce. That's the version control system, similar to Git, if you've heard of Git, where we store all of the game data. It allows people to collaborate. So one person can make a project and put it in Perforce, and then another person can get that, make a modification, add player, and submit it back to Perforce, and then people can now get that, and there's now a player in it, and then somebody else can add a UI or add an enemy or gold coins. So and so Perforce is the central storage place where the game lives, and then people can get it and edit it. So we shorten it to P4 quite often. There are other version control systems, but Perforce is a popular one in the game industry. So initially we need to set up Perforce. We've got to maybe set up Google Docs, maybe some email lists. Got to set up Jira so that we've got another issue tracking system, so that we basically it's kind of like setting up the environment that we're going to work in together. We're going to create an empty project, maybe it says Hello World on screen, and add that to Perforce, and now we've got a game. There's no player, there's no world, but it says Hello World, and that's a starting point. And we're going to write a TDD, and so I've got a days column here. I'm throwing in estimates here, so a couple of days to do that initial setup, 1 day to create an empty project, and I'm going to say 8 days to write a TDD for this game. And are these accurate? Well, maybe this should be 1 day, maybe that's a half a day, maybe this 8 should be longer, maybe it's going to take 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I'm not sure. So yeah, kind of give your best guess. I like to keep it in whole numbers, although I'll sometimes do a half or something like that. Okay, so once we've done some initial setup, we're going to work on the map. We need to load and render map tile sprites. So we need like grass tiles and rock tiles and box tiles and whatnot. We need to load them off disk and show them on the screen. We need to load a map from a text file. We're gonna define our map in a text file. We're gonna have like a little X means a rock, and space means empty space that you can walk through. And so you're gonna have your Mario Brothers style map just as like ASCII text in a text file. So we're gonna load that, and then we're gonna draw that whole map on screen, and then we're gonna only draw the correct region that we're showing. So a programmer breaks down this list of like, here's how we're gonna get the map rendering. So you can see that I total those up, 7 days there for getting the map on screen. Maybe that's a bit long really, but this is just an example. Player moves. We're going to add a basic floating player, so there's just a player floating in space. We're going to add gravity and collision so that it can land. And we're going to add walking left and right. We're going to add jumping. We're going to add camera movement so that the camera can follow the player around. And we're going to iterate on player feel. Iterate meaning just to kind of do more passes of it, polish it, kind of. So we're going to make it feel nice. The player movement, and 3 weeks for that. So we really care about getting the player to feel nice. And then I'll try and speed up a bit. Widgets, add stacking crates, exploding barrels, and gold coins. For vertical slice, we're not making the full game, we're just making a slice of it. We're going to add some NPCs. We've got a mushroom enemy and a cactus enemy. And for player death, we're going to add the ability for the player to die and respawn, add the concept of lives, add the concept of getting to the end of the level so that you can move to the next level. UI, we're going to add a simple HUD with lives and score. Going to add a basic main menu that just allows you to play the game. So it's like logo of the game and you press a button, you're just playing the game. So really basic. We're going to add some simple sounds, gameplay sound effects, music, UI sound effects. Maybe we don't need UI sound effects at this stage. And some miscellaneous stuff. We're going to have automated Jenkins builds. We're going to set up Steam publishing so that we can share the game through Steam with people that we want to. And padding at 20%. Let's have a look at this cell. So if I look at the contents of this, in fact, I'll double click on it. It says it equals the sum of D3 to D30. Here's D3 to D30. It's that orange box. So the sum of that, so add it all up and times it by 0.2. So that's 20%. And you times it by 0.2. And so if I just drag over these, I can see that the sum down here is 109 days to do all of that stuff, and adding 20% is 22 days. And then similarly, I've not broken it down to the same degree, but you would. You'd have production, and we're going to do. We've got the same kind of things: player, widgets, NPCs, UI, leaderboards, friends, achievements, certification requirements, and miscellaneous stuff. And you would work out. You would have detailed lists for each one of these, and they would total up to to numbers. Again, we've got padding. This one is just summing up the production period and adding 20%. Wow, it says times 20%. I didn't do that. And then at the bottom, I do a sum from D3, which was up at the top, to D42, which is down here. And so I'm just adding up all the days, including the padding, and that tells me the total man days to alpha. So I'm not including the time in alpha or beta or submission in this, because I can't really predict that stuff very well. The block schedule is a better way of thinking about alpha, beta, submission. This is just an attempt, this schedule is an attempt to get to feature complete. Like, what is everything we need to do to be feature complete? We know that after that, it's going to take us a while just to get through polishing and bugs. There'll be stuff to do. Let's just assume that we'll be busy with polishing and bug fixing. So to get to feature complete, 641 days. I then divide it by 20. So I say D44 divided by 20. That's this cell divided by 20. Gives us total man months to alpha. Why 20? Well, there's about 4 weeks in a month. We only work 5 days a week, so 20 days. I have given the number more thought than that, but basically it works out as like 20 days. Okay, so that's my programming schedule, and again, this section would be expanded out in more detail. I just didn't want to do a whole imaginary project in this example. And then you'd have one of these for each department. So we've got art department and slightly different style. You can tell I've written it because it's got this same kind of hierarchical thing on the left-hand side, but a bit different over here. Let's have a look. For the player, so we've got characters. Okay, so we've got to make some characters for the game. There's a player, and then there's some NPCs, which will be like enemies. Okay, so the player, we need concept. We need to get creative and come up with some nice drawings of what the player might look like. Does he have big arms or big legs or da-da-da? Then, so I've said it takes 20 days per item. It takes 1 day to come up with one concept for the player, and we're going to come up with 5 concepts, and so the total amount of time we're going to spend doing concepts for the player is 5 days. We're going to spend a week coming up with ideas for what the player could look like. Once we then select the one we want, we're going to model it. And modeling it's going to take 5 days. What does modeling it mean? Well, if we're doing 3D rendering and he's an animated character like in an animated movie, then we're going to build a 3D mesh of him or her. And if it's a 2D style where it's kind of flat card, then maybe we're drawing sprites or something like that. Here the art department has told me it's going to take 5 days to model it, so I'll go with 5 days. And we're just going to do one player character, so it's just one in that column, so another week to model it. Then we need to animate it. And based on the GDD and some work by the art team, which is probably not on the schedule, we've decided it's going to take 2 days to make an animation, and we need 20 animations. So, stand still, walk left, walk right, run left, run right, jump, fall, die, hit, all these things. There's going to be 20 of them. So we're going to spend 40 days on animating. And then polishing and iteration, we're going to just say, all right, 4 weeks of polishing and iteration. So we're going to be making the animations look nicer. We're going to maybe go back and tweak the model a little bit. We got 4 weeks for whatever we need to do. We're just going to do that one time, so 20 days. And then I've got this column here for subtotal. So here I'm just doing a sum of F3 to F6 to add those together, and that tells me we're going to spend 70 days on the player. In terms of milestones, that might be one person for 70 days, which would be, I can do this, come on, 14 weeks? No, hang on, don't want to get this wrong. Well, one milestone is going to be 20 days, so it's going to be 3.5 milestones. So it's like about 3.5 months of work on the player. All right, so we'll say that's how long we estimate for the player. Then let's think about one individual NPC, so our cactus enemy or something like that. And I've gone with the same format, but the numbers are a bit different. So concepts, 1 day to come up with a concept. We're only going to do 3 per NPC. So 3 days of concepting. Modeling is going to take 4 days, and we do that once for this individual NPC, so 4 days here. Animation is going to be a lot simpler. There's only enemies are going to have, it's 2 days to make an animation, but we're only going to have 7 because enemies don't do as many things as the player does, so they've just got 7. So 14 there, and then polish and iteration, you don't get much. We'll say 4 days for each NPC. So you make it look as good as you can in the 4 days you got. So we've got a 25-day estimate / budget for a single NPC. And then we're going to have a bunch more NPCs. So all the art steps. So I'm just saying, all of this together. And what I'm going to do is I've got this subtotal here. Here I'm going to say days per item, and it just equals G11. It equals how much time it took to make one thing. And we're going to have 10 more NPCs. So there's a total of 11 NPCs, non-player characters. A total of 11 characters. So here I did a sort of full explanation of like, here's what goes into a single one. And then on this line, I'm saying, all right, and now I want 10 more of those. So I've got how long it took to make one times 10 equals 250. So you can see that we're spending a lot of time. It's actually going to be 275 days building NPCs. It's kind of a lot, isn't it? And the reason I'm using all these formulas is I could change things. Let's say we talk to the animator again. And the animator's feeling confident. And he's like, you know what? I'm thinking 1.5 days per animation. So I can go here and say 1.5 and check out this 25 over here. So I press and this 14. I press enter. Okay, so now this changed from 14 to 10.5. This 25 changed to 21.5. This said 25 before, and now that says 21.5. And so the total here, has gone down as well. So that's why we use formulas for when we're doing this, so that if there's any changes, everything just updates the right way. Okay, and then there's some other stuff. I'll speed up a little bit, but we've got to make in the world. We've got to make floor tiles, widget tiles, widget animations, and backgrounds. This is what the artists came up with. There's how many days, how many of them. So we multiply them together, and we got a subtotal for that. And UI, we need to do a bunch of UI work. I'll not go through it all, but we've got a total of 99 here. And then, similar to the first sheet, I'm going to add up all my subtotals over here. I could also do it on this column if I wanted. And it's 504 days to alpha, and divide that by 20, and it's 25 man-months to alpha. Now, as I look at this, I realize I forgot something. Do you know what it is? I missed out padding. Now, maybe I should add a line that says plus 20% for padding. Well, I could, but I've got to be careful about over padding or double padding, because what I've done here is I've said for the player I've got 20 days of polish and iteration. Now, do we need padding as well as that? Or is it enough to say that polish and iteration, is the padding? Or maybe I should rename that polish, iteration / padding. And then I could check with the artist, like, hey, did we, what did you mean by this? Does this include padding? Like, do you want padding on top of all this, or is this padded already? So, you can have these discussions with the leads to make sure that they've not missed anything. As a producer, you could also, so this estimate I would expect to come from the art lead, but a good producer will look at it and then they'll go back with questions like, hey, looks good. A few questions. Does this include padding? And if not, do you want to add it, or do you feel like you're happy with these estimates the way they are? Maybe you might spot something in the GDD that they've not put in the art schedule, like, hey, achievements. Have I got them here? I don't see them, unless they're in icons. Each achievement has got a special graphic icon that needs to show up. Is that included? Is that what you mean by icons? Or do we need to add those as well? And the artist might say, like, oh, good catch, let's add another line under icons that says achievement icons, and add those in. So a good producer can help spot problems, with estimates, and get them fully fleshed out, because you really want to realize these things early on, not halfway through development. Okay. And then the design department could also have an estimate. I've just thrown in. I've not built this. I've got it in an early stage. So early draft task list. Write GDD and estimate. Do paper maps. Make the vertical slice level. Build the other levels. Work with programmers on tuning NPCs and widgets. Design what UI needs to functionally do. So by that I mean when you design the UI for the game, first you need to say, what does it need to do? Does it need to show the score, the lives? Does the main menu need to have credits? Does it need to have a cheat code entry system? You know, you need to think functionally, what does it need to have before you can then say to an artist, hey, these are the requirements that we need from, you know, that the UI needs to fill. Can you make something, you know, pretty that does this? So that's what I mean by design what the UI functionally needs to do. And define the achievements and write the achievement text. So there'd probably be a bunch more things here, and we need a column that says how many days each of these things takes. So you know, this one's not complete, but you get the idea from the other sheets. Okay, so that's an example of a detailed schedule. All right, and once you've got these numbers, like how many man months, 32. Okay, now you can go back to your block schedule and say, well, how many man months do we have until alpha? Let's see, if I just select all the programmers from milestone 1 through alpha, that's the amount of time, this is the amount of man months that we have in the programming department. So, and countdown here says 21, and that makes sense. It's 7 milestones times 3, so 3 times 7, 21. Now let's look back at our detailed schedule. Okay, we've got 21 man months available, and our schedule says 32 man months. So, you know, the schedule is 50% over what we have available. This is a problem. We shouldn't start work on this project if, you know, with the estimate being so much higher than, you know, than the time we have available. All right, let me bring it back here. So we've got our block schedule, we've got our detailed schedule. Does it fit? So does the estimate fit within the budget? In this case, no, it didn't. And, you know, quite often it won't. So what do you do about it? First of all, resist the urge to squeeze the estimates to fit. You're just fooling yourself and you will regret it. So, you know, if somebody says it's going to take 10 days to make the main menu, you could go and say, like, all right, can you get it done in 5? And, you know, you could apply pressure. If you can say, you know, if we can get these estimates to fit within the available time, then we can start on this project and, you know, feel like we're going to do it. So, you know, you could pressure people to say, like, hey, you know, is this going to fit? But you would be fooling yourself, you know, because when they actually get around to building that main menu, either they're going to make something in 5 days, but it's not very good, or it's going to just end up taking 10 days, and then, you know, now you're behind schedule. That said, it is worth having conversations with the leads. Estimates are rough, you know, they're fuzzy, and maybe the person estimating, you know, was being too cautious. They were you know, they ended up accidentally double padding their estimates, because we've got, like, you know, padding on each task and then plus 20% on everything. So it's good to have these kind of, you know, conversations to say, all right, you know, is the estimate accurate? Okay, but don't just squeeze numbers, just, you know, because it'll get you in the end. What you need to do if you're over schedule is adjust the scope and iterate on the GDD and TDD until the scope is the right size. So scope, you know, is the amount of work that needs to be done. How do you do this? Well, when you look at, let's have a look back at our detailed schedule. So, and I'll go with the artists. Let's say the artists are over schedule, okay? What are you going to do? You're going to look at this thing and say, all right, where are we spending all of our time? And a quick glance at this says like, well, UI is pretty big. Like we spend a long time on UI, and you know, world some but not loads. Player's kind of expensive, but the player does need to be good. But like the elephant in the room here is other NPCs. We've got 11 NPCs in the game, and we're going to spend 275 days, which is over half the project, just making NPCs. You know, animating them and modeling them and all that stuff. So this becomes, and we'll say in this case that the art estimate is over the available you know, bandwidth, the available time that we have. So great place to start the conversation with the designer is like, hey, art team's over because there's so many NPCs and it takes ages to make them. Any chance we could reduce the number of NPCs? And you can have that discussion. You can also talk to the artists. How exactly are we going to make these NPCs? What makes them so expensive to make? Could we somehow simplify the NPCs so that they are easier to make? Because if we can get this 25 number down, then that, you know, multiplied by 10, that has a big effect, right? So, you know, you can chat with the artists and see whether there's a way that we could reduce how long it takes to make an NPC. And you can talk with the designers to see, can we reduce how many NPCs we need to make? And if these do change, it'll also affect the programming schedule as well. If, oh yeah, we're going to get rid of 2 NPCs. Now we only need 9 in the game instead of 11. Well, that's going to save time on the programming side because there's less NPCs that need programming. So that's kind of how you'd approach it. You look at like where in the estimate are we spending the most time, and what can we do about it? Okay, so we adjust the scope and iterate until it's the right size, including padding. Like, you don't want to get it to the right size with 0 padding because you're always going to need that padding. Okay, last slide. What's next? Plan milestones. Now that you have a plan that appears to be the right size, create more detailed plans for each milestone. Ideally, you'd have a detailed task list for the whole project with no single task bigger than, say, 3 days. Why do I say that? In my schedule, oops, let's go to the programmers. I've got things like add stacking crates, 10 days. Well, when I see that, I think, what needs to happen to make stacking crates? What I see when I see this line is like someone just took crates and thought and picked a number. Here's how long it's going to take to make crates, but the number is quite large, and so I don't trust it. What would be better here is if I broke crates down into multiple lines that says I need to get a crate on the screen. They need to have gravity and collision so that they can stack. If I hit a lower one, they need to start falling again, not just float there in the air. You know, so I might make a list of things that the crates need to do, and then individually estimate those things. And when you do that, inevitably the number changes. Instead of 10, maybe it goes down a bit, maybe it goes up a bit. So a good rule of thumb is nothing bigger than 3 days. That said, it's tricky to do a full schedule at that level of accuracy. I got tired of writing tasks after 1 page here and ended up just throwing in huge numbers for this. Obviously, this is not a good schedule. But so anyway, so ideally, you got the whole project for all departments, you know, broken down into tasks in this way. In reality, there's a fog of war. You can only reliably see so far before the fog kicks in, and you don't really know kind of what's going to happen. Your initial assumptions about what will be fun and how long things will take will be incorrect. You can't predict what problems you're going to encounter. Also, planning takes time away from making the game. You could have your leads spend months coming up with the perfect schedule without implementing anything. They're just spending all their time in Excel, imagining this project, coming up with very detailed schedules, etc. And then, once they're done with that perfect plan, they start developing the game, and 2 days in, they discover, you know what, this isn't fun what we were thinking. We need to go in a different direction. We need to do more prototyping, and the whole schedule, is now in question. A lot of it just became irrelevant 2 days in. So there's a balance that needs to be struck between how long do we spend planning and how long do we spend executing. You definitely don't want to just execute with no planning. Let's make the GDD later. Let's not have a TDD. Let's not make a schedule. Let's just start making a game. How long is it going to take? I don't know. We'll see. I don't really want to fund that game with my money. I don't know when it's going to be done. I don't know if it's going to be fun. So there's this kind of balance between how long you spend planning and scheduling and implementing things. So pragmatically, you end up having a detailed short-term plan and then an increasingly coarse plans for future milestones. So the current milestone and maybe the next one, you want like a really detailed plan of like, this is exactly what we're going to do in the next 4 to 8 weeks. The rest of the project though, it's okay if it's just like, oh, milestone 6, we're going to do achievements. It's okay for things to get sort of more coarse. All right, that's it for this video. I hope that was helpful. Just to review, define what we're making, create a block schedule, create a detailed schedule from that, and then work out, does it fit? And if it doesn't, you kind of repeat the loop. You go back to your GDD and TDD and start making changes to the scope of the game to get it to be the right size. All right, thanks very much for listening. I hope you got something out of that, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.